Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you here at SBS.Earth. Carbon credits are a complex and rapidly evolving asset class. In this talk, I'll focus on a specific issue which I believe can be addressed using public governance techniques pioneered by the open source community and now being adopted by many Web3 projects, including KlimaDAO. The premise of the voluntary carbon market is to enable those who have capital and want to fund climate action to channel that capital toward projects on the ground taking verified climate action that avoids or removes carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions. This diagram gives an overview of the structure of the voluntary carbon market. And in this talk, I'll be focusing on the top left, where carbon credit standards like Verra and Gold Standard work with carbon project developers, as well as scientists, to develop standardized methodologies for implementing climate action. Each of these methodologies is a scientific document that outlines specific steps, preconditions, and measurement for verifying and implementing climate action. There are a wide variety of methodologies for carrying out this important work, ranging from switching to renewable energy to planting trees, and even sucking carbon dioxide directly out of the atmosphere. This example methodology development process from Verra's verified carbon standard gives you a sense of what this process typically looks like. Most of these steps involve review by a group of experts at the carbon credit standard. But importantly, step 4 does involve a public consultation process where anyone can provide input on the proposed methodology. And it ends with either the acceptance or rejection of that methodology by the carbon credit standard. Note that this process does not explicitly account for the end of life of an accepted methodology. Once a methodology has been approved, it's assumed to continue to be used, perhaps revised by running a modified version of the methodology through this process again. But there is no formal standing process for removing existing credits issued under a methodology that's been end-of-lifed. This leads me to a pattern I've observed that once a methodology has been around for a while, gained some traction, inevitably areas for improvement are identified. These are often voiced initially in the form of a scientific paper, offering reasoned criticism and data. But these articles are then often picked up by a media outlet that takes the opportunity to focus on the problems rather than identifying areas for improvement and emphasizing that this scientific criticism is an important part of improving methodologies over time. And so I propose a corollary of Murphy's Law: whatever can go wrong will go wrong, for carbon credit methodologies. No methodology is perfect, therefore all methodologies will be criticized. We see some examples of this one from 2021, where DZine calls into question the value of planting trees. More recently, The Guardian has undermined has questioned the integrity of avoided deforestation, which has undermined confidence in this methodology. And we also see some scientific articles, for instance, this one addressing cookstove credits, which have not yet been picked up by mainstream media, but if the pattern holds, I expect they will be eventually. Now, if the VCM is going to scale to address the scope of the climate crisis and play the important role that many experts believe it can, we need to address these integrity issues in a way that doesn't undermine public confidence in the market itself, in the premise of this market. If we allow these simplistic media narratives to destroy confidence in entire methodologies, we're going to have a lot of difficulty scaling up the VCM by the needed amount, not just because the methodologies may not deliver the intended effect, but because the confidence of buyers and project developers to participate in the market will be undermined. The Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market, or ICVCM, aims to address some of these issues with their core carbon principles. But the CCPs themselves are going to require ongoing revisions over time to reflect the changing scientific consensus. And so this question of an end of life for an existing methodology doesn't go away just because a floor has been set by the CCPs. So the question remains, how can the market deliberately move on from a methodology which has reached the end of its life? I'd like to look at HFC 23 decomposition as an example of a methodology that is no longer being used by new projects and yet hasn't been properly and completely deprecated from the carbon markets. The idea behind the HFC 23 decomposition is that HFC 23 is a potent greenhouse gas generated as a byproduct of refrigerant manufacturing. There is a piece of equipment that can be installed in refrigerant factories that destroys the vast majority of the HFC-23 byproduct, but it's expensive. And so the idea behind this technology-based avoidance credit is that you subsidize the cost of the installation of the equipment by the issuance of carbon credits. At the time, this was thought to be a very cost-effective methodology that addressed a very potent greenhouse gas. However, some issues emerged, and in particular, the Montreal Protocol eventually came into effect, which mandated the decomposition of HFC-23. And so eventually, HFC-23 decomposition methodology was phased out for new projects by the Verra registry. But this change did not destroy any of the existing credits, nor did it prevent retirement of the existing credits in the Verra registry. When I began to understand this issue in the middle of 2022, I did some data analysis to assess the extent to which HFC-23 credits were still being used for retirement purposes. I found that no retirements had been made in almost 2 years, and that indicated to me that these credits should no longer be supported in KlimaDAO's digital carbon market. And so I advanced a proposal via the KlimaDAO governance process to destroy these HFC-23 credits and remove them from the ecosystem permanently. That proposal was met with 80% approval by the token voters that came out on Snapshot, our token-based voting system. And eventually those credits were destroyed, as you can see here in the on-chain transaction. Meanwhile, in the off-chain world, we've seen several retirements of HFC-23 based credits over the last few months, which again points to the importance of standards bodies developing a mechanism for the end of life of a given carbon credit methodology, which can destroy any unused credits sitting out in the market and prevent them from being used in the future, which again may undermine the integrity of the market. If you'd like to learn more about this issue, I've included links to these slides here, as well as a personal blog post where I go into this issue in more depth. Feel free to get in touch if you have any questions or feedback.